She collapsed onto the ancient altar, the bloodstone burning in her hands as her life force drained away. Behind her, she heard him, the king she'd come to destroy, the man she'd learned to love, screaming her name as he raced through the darkness to stop her. "You are killing yourself," he snarled, pulling her from the ritual, his hands shaking with fury and terror. "Did you really think I wouldn't follow?" She'd planned to sacrifice everything to free her people. He refused to let her die alone. Two broken souls, one impossible choice, and a power that demanded the ultimate price. What happens when the woman who came for revenge decides the king is worth saving, and he decides she's worth dying for? The selection hall smelled of fear and expensive wine. Arya stood in the line of Omegas, her hands clasped before her, her face a careful mask of nothing. Around her, the other girls trembled. Some wept. One had fainted an hour ago and been dragged away by guards who didn't care where her head struck the marble floor. She did not tremble. The palace rose around them like a monument to cruelty, all white stone and gold filigree, chandeliers that cost more than her entire neighborhood earned in a year. Through the tall windows, she could see the slums where she'd grown up, a dark stain against the city's pristine wealth. Next, the voice came from the platform at the room center, where the Alpha King sat on a throne of black iron and silver. Cashin Blackthorn, the frozen king, the widowed beast. Arya had seen him once before, years ago, when he'd ordered her father's execution. She'd been 14, hidden in the crowd, watching as the duke who'd raised her was dragged to the scaffold. Cashin hadn't even watched the blade fall. He'd already been walking away. She remembered his profile, the brutal beauty of it, the complete absence of remorse. Now, at 22, she stepped forward when her number was called. The king didn't look up immediately. He was signing something, his hand moving with the same controlled precision she imagined he brought to everything. His advisor, Lord Theron, whispered in his ear. The older man's eyes were sharp, calculating. "Name," Theron said. "Arya." She kept her surname to herself. Here she was nobody. A poor Omega from the 5th district, selected because she was young and unbonded and had no family to protest her conscription. That last part was a lie, but they didn't need to know about her sister. Cashin looked up. His eyes were gray, cold as winter stone. They moved over her face, without interest, without recognition. Why would there be recognition? She'd been a child. He'd executed hundreds. "Turn around," Theron said. Arya obeyed, rotating slowly. She felt their gazes on her body, assessing, measuring. Property being evaluated. She'd worn her plainest dress, hoping to be overlooked, but even poverty couldn't hide certain things. The curve of her waist, the length of her legs, the way her hair fell in dark waves down her back. "Acceptable," Cashin said, his voice flat. "Send her to the western wing." Just like that, her fate was sealed. They took her to a room that was larger than the apartment she'd shared with her sister. White walls, a bed with silk sheets, a window that didn't open though she tried, a prison dressed as luxury. "The king will send for you," the guard told her, not meeting her eyes. "When he does, you go. You don't speak unless he asks you a question. You don't refuse. You don't." "I understand," Arya said. The guard looked at her then, something like pity in his expression. "No, you don't." He left her alone. Arya sat on the edge of the bed and did not cry. Crying was for people who still believed tears changed anything. She'd stopped believing that the day she watched her father die. Instead, she studied the room, noted the expensive lock on the door, meant to keep her in, not others out. Observed the guard rotation pattern through her window. Counted the hours of darkness. If she was going to destroy a king, she needed to understand his kingdom first. He sent for her 3 hours after midnight. The guard who escorted her said nothing, just walked her through corridors of increasing opulence until they reached a set of black doors. He knocked once, then retreated with speed that suggested experience. "Enter." Arya pushed open the door. The king's chambers were dark, lit only by a fire burning low in an enormous hearth. She could see him standing by the window, looking out at his city. He'd removed his formal attire, no crown, no ceremonial cloak. Just dark clothes that made him blend into the shadows. He didn't turn around. Close the door.
She did.
Come here. Arya walked toward him, her bare feet silent on thick carpet. She stopped an arm's length away, close enough to smell cedar and smoke, far enough to maintain the illusion of distance. He turned then, and she saw his face properly for the first time. Cashen Blackthorn was beautiful in the way winter was beautiful, all sharp edges and dangerous cold. His jaw was cut like it had been carved from stone. His mouth was set in a permanent line of controlled displeasure. But it was his eyes that held her. Gray, yes, but not empty. Not quite. There was something there, buried deep. Something that might have been human once, before whatever had happened to hollow him out. Do you know why you're here? He asked. Yes. Say it. Arya met his gaze, and did not flinch. To provide comfort. At your convenience. Something flickered across his expression. Too fast to name. Comfort, he repeated, tasting the word like it was foreign. Is that what they're calling it now? He moved closer, and she forced herself not to step back. This was a test. Everything with alphas was a test. He reached out, and she thought he would touch her face, but instead his fingers went to her throat, finding her pulse. Not squeezing, just feeling the proof of her heartbeat. You're not afraid, he said. Not a question. No, you should be. Should I, Ol? His eyes narrowed. For a long moment, he simply looked at her, and Arya had the unsettling sensation of being truly seen for the first time since entering this palace. Not assessed. Not evaluated. Seen. Then the moment passed. Get on the bed. There it was. The command she'd been expecting. Arya turned and walked to the massive bed, her movements careful, controlled. She sat on the edge, then lay back against pillows that smelled of cedar and something darker. Cashen followed, but there was no urgency in his movements. No desire. He looked at her the way someone might look at a meal they'd ordered out of habit, not hunger. When he touched her, his hands were cold. It was over quickly. Mechanical. He used her body with the efficiency of someone completing a necessary task, and when he finished, he withdrew immediately, already turning away. Arya lay still, staring at the ceiling, feeling nothing. This was what she'd expected, what she'd prepared for. Pain she could endure. Humiliation she could swallow. This empty, transactional use of her body, this was survivable. You can go, he said, his back to her. She sat up, reaching for the sheet to cover herself. Leave it. Arya froze. The sheet, he clarified, still not looking at her. Leave it. You'll need to be cleaned before returning to your room. Someone will come. Of course. Even this small dignity was not hers to keep. She stood, naked and aching, and walked to the door. Her hand was on the handle when his voice stopped her. What's your surname? Arya's breath caught. She turned slowly. He still wasn't looking at her. He'd moved to a cabinet, pouring himself a drink with steady hands. I don't have one, she lied. My family is dead. How convenient. He drank, the liquor disappearing in one swallow. Then, finally, he turned. His eyes found hers across the room, and for a heartbeat, she thought she saw something in them. Recognition. Suspicion. Impossible. He couldn't know. Go, he said. Arya left. In the corridor, a servant waited with a robe and directions to the bathing chambers. The woman's face was kind, pitying. Arya took the robe without comment and followed. As warm water washed away the king's touch, she stared at her reflection in the polished bronze mirror. Her face looked the same, unchanged. But inside, something had shifted. She'd survived the first night. And tonight, before he'd used her, before he'd touched her, she'd seen something she hadn't expected. Cashen Blackthorn was not a monster wearing a man's face. He was a man desperately pretending to be a monster. That made him more dangerous than she'd imagined. And far more vulnerable. In her mind, she recalculated every plan she'd made for revenge. Adjusted every variable. Because destroying a monster was simple. You found its weakness and struck. But destroying a man? That required something far more intimate than hate. Subscribe to Diya's romance library for stories of endurance, recognition, and bonds forged in the space between power and restraint. This is where strength is proven in silence and acknowledgement is earned, never given. The palace operated on a rhythm Arya learned quickly. She woke before dawn in her white-walled room, ate breakfast brought by silent servants, then descended to the archives, where she'd been assigned as an assistant cataloger, a position given to educated Omegas who needed to appear occupied during daylight hours. The work was supposed to be mindless, dusting old volumes, organizing tax records, copying decrees in neat script. Instead, Arya found it was the only freedom she had. The head archivist was an elderly beta named Matthias who'd gone half-blind and didn't care what she did as long as the work appeared done.
So she dusted, yes.
She organized. But she also read. The palace archives held centuries of records, treaties, family lineages, private correspondences that should have been burned but weren't. And in the oldest section, relegated to forgotten shelves, texts written in a language nobody bothered to learn anymore. Nobody except the daughter of a duke who'd been taught by private tutors before her world collapsed. Ancient Lorien, the language of the first wolf packs, before humans and shifters split into their designated hierarchies. Before alphas ruled and omegas submitted. Arya could read every word. She worked carefully, never showing too much interest. She'd learned patience during the 8 years since her father's execution. Patience and the art of being overlooked. So she waited until Matthias left for his afternoon nap, then pulled down the volumes bound in cracked leather. Most were historical records, breeding lineages, territory disputes. Nothing useful. But on her 5th day in the archives, she found something else. A private journal, written in code-switched ancient Lorien and modern script. The author's name was scratched out, but dates placed it within the last decade. And the content. The king believes she died of fever. Let him believe it. The bloodstone is safe, hidden where only those who remember the old ways can find it. But I fear what will happen when truth surfaces. If she was murdered for knowing. The entry ended abruptly, the next pages torn out. Arya's hands trembled as she closed the journal. Cashin's mate. His dead wife. The tragedy that had created the frozen king. What if she hadn't died naturally? Night came with the same guard's knock. The king requests your presence. Arya set aside the book she'd been pretending to read and followed. By now, she knew the path, knew the number of steps, knew which guards looked away and which watched her pass with something like shame in their eyes. Cashin's chambers were lit differently tonight. More candles. The fire built higher, as if he was trying to chase away darkness that lived inside rather than outside his walls. He stood by the window again. Same position as the first night, like a statue that had never moved. You're late, he said without turning. The guard came when the guard came. Don't be clever. Arya said nothing. She'd learned that silence frustrated him more than words. He wanted her to be like the others, weeping or seductive or grateful. Her refusal to perform any of those roles created a tension she could feel vibrating in the space between them. Come here. She walked forward until she stood where she'd stood before. Close enough. Not too close. This time when he turned, his eyes went to her face first.
Studying.
Searching for something he couldn't seem to find. Do I frighten you? He asked. Would you prefer I said yes? His jaw tightened. I prefer honesty. No, Arya said. You don't frighten me. Why not? Because I've already lost everything you could take, she thought. Because I've seen what real monsters look like, and you're not one of them. Because I know what you did to my father, and that makes you predictable. I don't know, she said instead. Cashin moved closer, and she caught the scent of him. Cedar, smoke, and underneath, something wild. Wolf. Even in human form, he carried it. The others cry, he said quietly. Or, they pretend desire. They perform whatever they think I want to see. What do you want to see? Nothing. The word came out harsh. I don't want to see anything. His hand rose, and she thought he would touch her, but instead he just hovered. Fingers an inch from her cheek, not quite connecting. Like he'd forgotten how. "You endure me," he said. "That's what you do. You lie there and endure it like a punishment you've accepted. Isn't that what this is?" Something cracked in his expression. There and gone, but she saw it.
Pain.
Real, human pain. Then his hand dropped. "Get on the bed." This time was different. He moved slower, touched her with something that wasn't quite gentleness, but wasn't quite violence either. Control, she realized. He was controlling himself, holding back whatever instinct told him to simply take. And when it was over, he didn't turn away immediately. He lay beside her in the darkness, not touching, but close enough that she could feel heat radiating from his skin. "Tell me something true," he said to the ceiling. Arya turned her head to look at him. His profile in the firelight was devastating. Beautiful and broken at once. About what? Anything. Something real. Not performance. She considered lying. Considered giving him something safe and meaningless. But there was something in his voice, exhaustion, maybe, or loneliness so deep it had become a physical thing. "I had a sister," she said quietly. "She's 14 now. I haven't seen her in 2 weeks." "Where is she?" "The 5th district, with a neighbor who thinks I'm working in a factory across the city." Cashin was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You took this position to send her money." It wasn't a question, but Arya answered anyway. "Yes. And when the selection came, you volunteered." "No one volunteers. We're chosen. But I didn't run. Others run. Others have places to run to." He turned his head then, looking at her directly. In the low light, his eyes weren't cold anymore. They were tired. Ancient tired, the kind that came from carrying weight too long. "What's her name?" he asked. "Celeste." "The stars," he translated. Ancient Lorien. So he knew the language too.
Of course he did.
"My father chose it," Arya said, then froze. She'd said too much. Revealed too much. A poor Omega from the slums wouldn't talk about her father choosing a name. That implied education. Status.
History.
But Cashin didn't react. He just looked at her a moment longer, then turned back to the ceiling. "You should go." Arya rose, reaching for the robe the servant had left. This time he didn't stop her from covering herself. She was at the door when he spoke again. "Your father. Is he why you don't cry?" Her hand tightened on the door handle. "My father is dead." "I know, but that's not what I asked." Arya looked back at him. He hadn't moved, still lying in the bed she'd just left, looking small somehow despite his size. Diminished by his own emptiness. "Yes," she said. "That's why." She left before he could ask anything else. In the corridor, she found someone waiting. Not the usual servant. This was a man in advisor's robes, silver-threaded and expensive. Lord Theron, the king's right hand. "Arya," he said, as if they were old friends. "Walk with me." It wasn't a request. They walked slowly through corridors she'd never seen before, past rooms that glittered with stolen wealth. Theron's hands were clasped behind his back, his expression pleasant. "Dangerous." "You're doing well," he said. The king seems satisfied. "I do what's required." "Of course. But I wonder, what else do you do? During the day, I mean, in the archives." Arya's heart kicked once, hard, but her face stayed calm. "Catalog records. Organized documents. Whatever Matthias asks." "Matthias," Theron repeated thoughtfully. "Going blind, isn't he? Can barely see what's on the shelves anymore. Convenient for someone who wanted to explore, unsupervised." She met his eyes. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't you?" He smiled. "You're educated. More than you should be for your supposed background. You read Ancient Lorien. Yes, I noticed the volume you were holding when I passed the archives yesterday. You didn't think I'd check. It's not illegal to read old languages."
"No."
"But it is interesting. Makes me wonder what a poor Omega from the 5th district would want with texts about ancient power structures. About bloodstones and prophecies. About the old ways before our current hierarchy was established." Arya stopped walking. "What do you want?" Theron stopped too, turning to face her fully. His smile never wavered, but his eyes were shark dead. "I want you to understand something," he said softly. "The king may be distracted by you, may even talk to you, which he hasn't done with anyone in years. But don't mistake his temporary interest for protection. You are replaceable, expendable, and if you become a problem." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. "I'm not a problem," Arya said. "See that you stay that way." He walked away, leaving her alone in a corridor that suddenly felt like a trap. Arya didn't return to her room immediately. Instead, she took a longer route, thinking, planning. Theron knew she could read ancient Lorien, knew she was researching something. If he truly understood what she'd found about Cashin's mate, about the Bloodstone, he'd have her killed already. Unless he didn't know everything. Unless he was involved. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice the door opening until someone grabbed her arm and pulled her into darkness. Arya's training kicked in. Her father had taught all his children basic combat before everything fell apart, and she twisted, aiming an elbow at her attacker's throat. A hand caught her wrist. "Stop. I'm not here to hurt you." The voice was female. Young. The grip strong but not cruel. Light flared, a small lamp lit, and Arya saw her captor. A woman about her age, dressed in guards' training leathers, with bronze skin and sharp eyes. "Who are you?" Arya demanded. "Lyra. Royal Guard, 3rd rank." She released Arya's wrist. "And before you scream or run, you should know I just saved your life." "From what?" "From walking past Theron's men. They're in the next corridor, waiting. He ordered them to stage an accident. A terrible fall. Such a tragedy." Arya's blood went cold. "Why would you help me?" Lyra studied her for a long moment. Then, "Because I know who you really are. Arya Sylvanus, daughter of Duke Aldrich Sylvanus, executed by the king 8 years ago. You look like your mother." The world tilted. "How?" "I was a child soldier in your father's guard," Lyra said quietly. "Before the purge. Before they scattered us. I've spent 8 years working my way into this palace, trying to find proof of what really happened. And then you showed up in the selection line, and I thought I was seeing a ghost." Arya couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. "If you know who I am, then I know you're here for revenge. Just like me." Lyra's smile was sharp. "Which means we should talk. Because Theron didn't act alone when he framed your father. And the king's mate didn't die of fever. She was murdered. By the same people who destroyed your family. And if we're not careful, we're next." Footsteps echoed in the distance. "Close." "Getting closer." "Come with me," Lyra said. "Or take your chances with them. Choose fast." Arya looked at this stranger, who claimed to be an ally. Who knew her real name. Who could expose her or save her. "Go," she said. They ran. So we can track every Omega in the kingdom at all times. For their safety, of course. For their protection. Will you sign it? Probably. The word was bitter. Because that's what I do. I sign things. I enforce things. I maintain order. Even when order is just another word for cruelty. Arya set down her glass. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're the only person in this entire palace who looks at me like I'm human." His eyes found hers, and they weren't cold anymore. They were burning. "Because every other person I see wants something from me, power, favor, approval. But you don't want anything. You just endure. And somehow that's more honest than anything else in my life. You don't know what I want." "No?" "Then tell me. Tell me one true thing about what you want, Arya." The way he said her name, like it mattered, like she was real, made something twist in her chest. "I want my sister to be safe," she said quietly. "I want her to never have to stand in a selection line. I want her to grow up free." Free. Cashin laughed, sharp and painful. "There's no such thing. Not in this world. Not for Omegas, not for Alphas, not for anyone. We're all trapped by what we are. Then change it." "You think it's that simple?" "No." but I think it's possible. He stood abruptly, moving to the window. The firelight turned him into something almost mythical, too beautiful, too dangerous to be just a man. My mate believed that, he said softly. Elena. She thought systems could be changed. She was researching the old ways, before designation hierarchy. She found something, evidence of something that could shift everything. But she died before she could tell me what it was. Arya's breath caught.
The bloodstone.
He was talking about the bloodstone. How did she die? Fever. That's what they told me. His hands fisted against the window frame. But she was healthy, strong, and the fever came so suddenly. She was gone in 3 days. You don't believe it was natural. I don't know what I believe anymore. He turned back to her, and his expression was naked, vulnerable. But I know that everyone who got close to whatever she was researching ended up dead or disappeared. And I know that Theron was the one who found her body, who called the physicians, who handled everything so efficiently. You think he killed her? Cashin's silence was answer enough. Arya stood slowly. This was her moment. She could tell him what she'd found in the archives. About the journal.
About the bloodstone.
About how Elena's death connected to her father's execution. But if she did, she'd reveal too much. He'd know she'd been researching. He'd start asking questions she couldn't answer. So instead, she walked to him. Not too close, but closer than she'd ever been when they weren't on his bed. Close enough to see the shadows under his eyes. The tightness around his mouth that spoke of pain held too long. You loved her, she said, more than anything, and you're still in love with her. Every day. His voice cracked. Every single day, I wake up and remember she's gone. That I couldn't protect her. That I'm sitting on this throne signing laws she would have hated, becoming exactly what she feared I'd become. Without thinking, Arya reached out. Her hand found his arm, just resting there. The contact felt enormous. They never touched except when he used her. This was different. He looked down at her hand, then up at her face. Why don't you hate me? He asked. Who says I don't? Your eyes. They're angry, yes, but not with hate. With something else. Grief, she thought. Recognition. Because I know what it's like to love someone who's gone. To carry that weight. Maybe hate is too simple, she said instead. Cashin's hand covered hers. Not forcing. Just touching. His skin was warm, almost burning. I don't deserve your kindness, he said. I'm not kind. I'm surviving. Then survive with me. Just for tonight. Let me pretend I'm not the king. That you're not, he stopped. Let me just be human for a few hours. Arya knew this was a mistake. Knew that every moment she spent seeing him as human made her revenge more complicated. But there was something in his voice, in the way he was looking at her, that made her incapable of walking away. Okay, she whispered. He pulled her closer, and for the first time, he held her. Not sexually. Not with possession. Just held her, his arms wrapping around her like she was an anchor in a storm he couldn't escape. Arya stood there, feeling his heartbeat against her cheek, feeling him shake slightly with suppressed emotion. And she realized with growing horror that she didn't want to destroy him anymore. She wanted to save him, which meant she'd already lost. They didn't use each other that night. Instead, they sat by the fire and Cashin talked. About Elena. About how they'd met. She'd been a scholar, researching historical texts. About how she'd made him laugh. About how she'd seen him, really seen him, past the crown and the power. She sounds like she was extraordinary, Arya said. She was. He smiled, sad and beautiful. She would have liked you. Why? Because you're like her. You see things others don't. You endure without breaking. You. He stopped, looking at her with an expression she couldn't read. You make me remember what it was like to feel something other than empty. The admission hung between them, dangerous and true. Arya should have pulled back, should have reinforced the walls. But instead, she said, I don't think you're empty. I think you're in so much pain you've convinced yourself nothing else can fit. Cashin stared at her. Then, slowly, he reached out and touched her face. really touched her, his thumb tracing her cheekbone with something like wonder. "Who are you?" he asked softly. "Your victim's daughter," she thought. "Your enemy. Your mistake." "Someone who understands," she said instead. He leaned forward, and she thought he would kiss her. But he stopped, his forehead resting against hers instead. "I don't want to use you tonight," he whispered. "I just want this, whatever this is." Arya closed her eyes. Okay. They stayed like that until the fire burned low and dawn began creeping through the windows. And when she finally left, she knew everything had changed. She was supposed to hate him. Instead, she was beginning to understand him. And that was far more dangerous than any knife she could have brought to his throat. Sometimes the greatest danger isn't the enemy you can see. It's the moment when their pain mirrors your own, and you realize the monster you came to destroy is just another broken soul trying to survive. Subscribe to Diya's Romance Library, where recognition begins in the spaces between hatred and understanding, and bonds form in the wreckage of what we thought we knew. Arya didn't sleep. She returned to her room as dawn broke, her mind spinning with everything Cashin had revealed. Elena, the research, the suspicious death, Theron's involvement. It all connected to what she'd found in the archives. The journal, the bloodstone, her father's execution. But now there was a new variable she hadn't accounted for, Cashin himself. The man who'd held her last night wasn't the cold king who'd ordered her father's death. He was someone shaped by loss, manipulated by advisors, drowning in a role he'd never wanted. And she'd felt it. The genuine grief, the desperate loneliness, the way he'd clung to her like she was the only real thing in his world. Focus, she told herself. He still killed your father. That doesn't change. But her heart wasn't listening to logic anymore. A knock startled her from her thoughts. She opened the door to find Lyra, dressed in training leathers, her expression urgent. "Get dressed," Lyra said quietly. "We need to talk. Somewhere secure." The archives? Compromised. Theron's been watching them. Lyra glanced down the corridor. "There's a place. Follow me in 10 minutes. Take the servant stairs to the kitchens, then the door by the cold storage. I'll be waiting." She left before Arya could respond. The place Lyra led her to was a forgotten storage room in the palace's oldest section, half-buried and accessible only through a maintenance passage. It smelled of stone and time. "Nobody comes here," Lyra said, lighting a lamp. "I've checked." Arya looked around at the dusty crates and broken furniture. What is this place? Old servant quarters. From before the current palace structure. They were walled off during renovations 50 years ago. Lyra pulled out a wooden box from behind a pile of canvas. "I've been using it to store evidence." She opened the box. Inside were documents. Letters. Official seals. Arya recognized some immediately. They bore her father's signature. Others were unfamiliar. "Where did you get these?" Arya breathed. 8 years of careful theft.
Bribes.
Trading favors with corrupt clerks. Lyra spread them out. "Your father was investigating something before his arrest. He discovered that someone in the royal council was embezzling tax revenue from Omega districts. Massive amounts. Enough to bankrupt entire regions. Theron."
Yes.
But he wasn't working alone. Lyra pulled out another document. "See this? It's a property deed. Transferred 3 days after your father's execution. Guess who bought your family estate for half its value?" Arya looked at the signature and felt her blood turn to ice. Lord Marcus Vane. Another council member. One who'd pushed hardest for her father's death sentence. "They framed him," Lyra said. "The evidence of treason was fabricated. Your father threatened to expose their corruption, so they destroyed him first." Arya's hands shook. She'd suspected. Had known, on some level. But seeing proof, seeing the conspiracy laid out in ink and signatures, made it real in a way that stole her breath. "Does the king know?" she managed. "That's the question, isn't it?" Lyra's expression was complicated. "I don't think so." Cashin was younger then, newly crowned after his father's death. Theron was his regent, essentially. Everything went through Theron's approval. The king probably never saw the actual evidence against your father. Just signed the execution order Theron put in front of him. That doesn't absolve him.
No.
But it changes things. Lyra studied her. You spent last night with him. Was it different? Arya looked away. We talked. About his mate.
Her death.
He suspects murder. Lyra went still. He told you that? Yes. Then he trusts you. Or he's starting to. Lyra leaned forward. That's good.
We can use that.
Use it how? To get closer to the truth. To access places only the king can reach. Lyra's eyes were fierce. Elena's death, your father's execution, the Bloodstone, they're all connected. And Theron is at the center. But we can't prove anything without evidence he's certainly destroyed. Unless the king helps us find it. Arya finished.
Exactly.
But for that to work, you need to tell him who you really are. The suggestion hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. He'd kill me, Arya said. Maybe. Or maybe he'd listen. Lyra paused. I saw how the guards looked when they escorted you last night.
Confused.
The king never summons anyone outside the established pattern. Never keeps someone in his private office for hours. Whatever happened between you two, it meant something. Arya thought about Cassion's face in the firelight. The way he'd held her. The vulnerability he'd shown. He's in pain, she said quietly. Real pain. Not the kind you can fake. So are you?
So am I.
So is everyone Theron's conspiracy has destroyed. Lyra's voice hardened. But pain doesn't buy him absolution. He's still the king. Still the one who signed the orders. Still the one with power to change things if he chooses. What if he doesn't choose? Then we destroy him anyway. But we try truth first. Because if Cassion really is being manipulated, if he really didn't know, he could be an ally instead of an enemy. Arya wanted to reject the idea. Wanted to hold on to her hate, because hate was simple. Hate gave her purpose. But she'd seen Cassion's face. Had felt his heartbeat. Had heard the desperation in his voice when he'd asked her to let him be human. I need time, she said. You don't have much. Theron's already suspicious. He tried to have you killed 2 days ago. I know. And it won't be the last attempt. Lyra gathered the documents back into the box. Whatever you decide, decide fast. Because if Theron moves first, we're both dead. Arya spent the day in the archives, trying to appear normal while her mind raced. Matthias was napping as usual. She pulled down another ancient Lorien text, one she'd been avoiding because it was too dangerous. Too revealing. The Bloodstone of the First Pack. According to legend, it was created when the first wolves walked as humans, before designation hierarchy existed. When alphas, betas, and omegas were just words for temperament, not biological destiny. The stone could supposedly return them to that state. Equalize all designations. Remove the biological imperatives that made alphas dominant and omegas subordinate. It was considered myth. A story told to make omegas feel less trapped by their nature. But Elena had believed it was real. And she died because of it. Arya was transcribing a passage when she heard footsteps. Not Matthias's shuffling gait. Someone younger. Confident. She looked up and froze. Cassion stood in the doorway, dressed simply, no crown. He looked younger without it. Almost approachable. Don't stop on my account, he said. Arya set down her pen carefully. What are you doing here? I'm told you spend every afternoon in the archives. I wanted to see what was so interesting. He moved closer, his eyes scanning the books around her. Then he saw the text she'd been reading. His expression changed. Ancient Lorien, he said. Advanced texts. Where did you learn to read this? Arya's mind raced. My father taught me before he died. Your father. Cassion picked up the book, his fingers tracing the worn cover. This is a rare volume. Dangerous even. It discusses bloodstones. Old power structures. Things the council would prefer stayed forgotten. I'm just translating. It's harmless. Is it? He set the book down and looked at her directly. Or, are you researching something specific? Looking for something? The air between them crackled with tension. Arya could feel the weight of his suspicion, his intelligence. He wasn't a fool. He was starting to piece things together. What do you think I'm looking for? She asked carefully. I don't know yet, but I intend to find out. He moved even closer, and suddenly the space felt too small. Intimate. Dangerous. Last night, he said quietly, I told you things I've never told anyone. Showed you parts of myself I've kept hidden for years. And now I find you researching the exact topics Elena was studying before she died. Arya's heart hammered. That's a coincidence. I don't believe in coincidences. His hand came up, not touching her but close enough that she could feel the heat of his skin. Who are you, Arya? Really? I'm nobody. A poor Omega who? You're not nobody. Nobody doesn't read ancient Lorien. Nobody doesn't look at me like they can see through every wall I've built. Nobody doesn't make me feel. He stopped, his jaw clenching. Tell me the truth. This was it. The moment Lyra had talked about.
Tell him or lie. Trust or deceive.
I can't, Arya whispered. Can't or won't. Both. Cassian stared at her, something like hurt flashing across his features. Then his expression went cold. The king returning.
Fine.
Then I'll find out myself. He stepped back. Consider this a warning. Whatever game you're playing, whatever you're looking for, I will discover it. And when I do, there won't be mercy just because I let you see me weak. He turned to leave. Cassian. He stopped at the door, not looking back. It's your majesty, he said coldly. Remember your place, Omega. Then he was gone, leaving Arya alone with the ancient texts and the knowledge that she'd just made a terrible mistake. She'd let him get too close. And now he was going to unravel everything. That night, he didn't send for her. Arya lay in her white-walled room, staring at the ceiling, waiting for the guard's knock that never came. The absence felt like punishment, like withdrawal. She told herself it was better this way. Distance was safer. But her chest ached with something that felt suspiciously like loss. He's the enemy, she reminded herself. He killed your father. This is what you wanted, for him to see you as a threat, not a comfort. But the logic rang hollow. Around midnight, Lyra appeared at her window, an impressive feat considering they were 3 floors up. She climbed through with the ease of someone trained for infiltration. We have a problem, Lyra said without preamble. Theron just called an emergency council session. Tomorrow morning. Private. About what? About you. Lyra's expression was grim. He's going to recommend your removal. Possibly your execution. Claims you're a security risk. How do you know? I have a source inside council chambers. Someone who owes me. Lyra grabbed Arya's shoulders. Listen to me. You have maybe 12 hours. If the council votes to eliminate you, even the king won't be able to stop it without revealing he cares. And if he cares, they'll know your leverage. What do I do?
Run.
Or fight. Lyra released her. I can get you out of the palace tonight. We disappear. Start over somewhere. What about my sister? We take her too. It'll be harder, but... And what about stopping Theron? What about justice for my father? For Elena? For everyone they've hurt? Lyra's expression was pained. Sometimes survival matters more than justice. Not to me. They stared at each other. Then Lyra sighed. You're going to tell him, aren't you? The king. You're going to reveal everything and hope he believes you. It's the only move we have left. It's a suicide move. Maybe. Arya stood. But if there's even a chance Cassian can be an ally instead of an enemy, we have to try. Otherwise, Theron wins. And people like him will keep winning forever. Lyra was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. You'll need proof. Evidence he can't ignore. She pulled something from her jacket. A key. This opens Theron's private study. I stole it years ago, been too afraid to use it. But if you're going to gamble everything, gamble big. Arya took the key, its weight enormous in her palm. When, she asked. Tonight. He's at the council emergency session planning meeting. His study will be empty for another 2 hours. Lyra met her eyes. If you get caught. I know. I mean it, Arya. If Theron catches you in his study, he will kill you.
Slowly.
And there won't be a body to bury. I understand. Lyra gripped her hand once, fierce and brief. Your father would be proud. Or horrified. Probably both. Then she was gone, disappearing through the window as silently as she'd come. Arya looked at the key in her hand. Then she got dressed in the darkest clothes she owned and prepared to break into the most dangerous place in the entire palace. In this world, truth is a weapon that cuts both ways, revealing it can free you or destroy you, and sometimes the difference is just a matter of timing. Subscribe to Diya's Romance Library for stories where the brave choose danger over safety and where recognition begins the moment you stop hiding who you truly are. Theron's study was in the oldest wing of the palace, accessible only through corridors that felt like stone throats trying to swallow her whole. Arya moved through shadows, her soft shoes silent on marble floors. She'd memorized the guard rotations, timed her movements to the gaps between patrols. Lyra's training had been thorough. The key slid into the lock with a soft click. Inside, the study was exactly what she'd expected. Expensive, organized, cold. Books lined the walls in perfect rows. A massive desk dominated the center, its surface empty except for a single lamp and an ornate letter opener that looked sharp enough to kill. Arya closed the door behind her and moved quickly. She started with the desk drawers. Tax records. Council minutes. Nothing incriminating. Then the bookshelves. She pulled volumes at random, checking for hidden compartments. Nothing. Time was slipping away. She had maybe an hour left before Theron returned.
Think.
Where would someone like Theron hide evidence of conspiracy and murder? Her eyes fell on a portrait hanging behind the desk. Theron himself, younger, painted in formal robes. The frame was ornate, heavy. Too heavy. Arya approached it carefully, felt along the edges, found a small latch disguised as decorative scrollwork. The portrait swung open like a door. Behind it, a safe. Of course, she muttered. The safe had a combination lock. 6 digits. She stared at it, her mind racing. What would Theron use? Birth date? Too obvious. A significant date? She thought about everything she'd learned. Theron had been part of the council for 23 years, had served 3 kings, had orchestrated countless. Her father's execution date. She tried it, day, month, year, the day Duke Aldrich Sylvanus died. The safe clicked open. Arya's hands shook as she pulled out the contents. Folders, letters, documents sealed with wax. And underneath everything, a small wooden box carved with symbols she recognized from ancient Lorien texts. She opened the box. Inside was a crystal. No, not a crystal. Something that looked organic, like it had grown rather than been cut. It pulsed with faint light, responding to her touch. The bloodstone. It was real. Elena hadn't died chasing a myth. This was what she'd discovered. What she'd been killed for. Arya lifted it carefully, feeling warmth spread through her palm. Energy. Ancient and powerful, and put it down.
She spun.
Cassian stood in the doorway, dressed in dark clothes, no crown. His eyes were locked on the stone in her hand, and his expression was unreadable. How did you? I followed you. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Did you really think I wouldn't notice you leaving your room? That I wouldn't have you watched after this afternoon? Arya's mind raced. She was caught. Completely, utterly caught. With the bloodstone in her hand and Theron's private safe open behind her. I can explain, she said. Can you? He moved closer, and she saw his hand was on the hilt of a dagger at his belt. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been lying to me from the beginning. Breaking into my advisor's study. Stealing a legendary artifact. What's next, Arya? Assassination?
No.
I'm not here to hurt you. Then why are you here? She met his eyes and made a choice. The only choice left. Because Theron killed your mate. And my father. And I can prove it. Silence fell like snow. Cassian stared at her. His hand stayed on the dagger, but he didn't draw it. Your father, he repeated slowly. Who was your father? Duke Aldrich Sylvanus. The words hung between them. Cassian's face went completely blank. That's impossible. Sylvanus's children were scattered, hidden, erased. Arya's voice shook. I was 14 when you signed his execution order. I watched from the crowd as they took his head. And I've spent 8 years planning how to make you pay. Then why tell me this now? Why not just kill me? Because I found evidence. And because she stopped her throat tight. Because I realized you didn't know about the conspiracy, about Theron, about what Elena discovered before she died. She gestured to the safe, to the documents spread across Theron's desk. It's all here. Proof that Theron and his allies have been embezzling tax revenue for decades. Then my father discovered it and was framed for treason. That Elena found the bloodstone and was murdered before she could tell you what it meant. Cassian moved past her to the desk. He picked up one of the documents, read it. Then another. His face remained blank, but she saw his jaw tighten. His hands start to shake. This is evidence of the conspiracy that's controlled your kingdom for years. Arya set down the bloodstone carefully. Theron didn't just kill 2 people. He's been systematically destroying anyone who threatens the power structure he profits from, including manipulating you into passing laws that hurt Omegas because keeping us oppressed keeps us desperate. Exploitable. Cassian read through more documents. She watched him process it all. The betrayal, the manipulation, the blood on his hands that wasn't supposed to be there. Your father, he said finally. The evidence I saw. The treason charges. It was all fabricated. Yes. And I signed the order. Yes. He looked at her then, and the pain in his eyes was so raw it hurt to witness. You came here for revenge. You let me, he stopped. Everything. Every night. You endured me, knowing I killed your father. Yes. You should have killed me. I know. Why didn't you? Arya's throat closed. Because somewhere between the first night and the last, between his cold commands and his desperate vulnerability, she'd stopped seeing a monster. Started seeing a man. I don't know, she whispered. Cassian turned away, his shoulders rigid. For a long moment, he just stood there, holding documents that proved his entire reign had been built on lies. Then he moved. Fast. Decisive. He grabbed the bloodstone, the documents, everything from the safe. Shoved them into a leather satchel he pulled from seemingly nowhere. What are you doing? Arya asked. Getting you out of here. Now. His voice was command-sharp. Theron will be back soon. When he finds his safe open, he'll know someone's been here. And you'll be the first person he suspects. But move, Arya. We don't have time. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward the door. But when he opened it, guards stood in the corridor. Not Cassian's guards. Theron's men. Your Majesty, the lead guard said, his voice carefully neutral. Lord Theron requests your presence. Immediately. I'm busy. He insists. It's about a security matter. The guard's eyes flicked to Arya. Concerning this Omega. Cassian's grip on her wrist tightened. She could feel the decision being made in real time. Fight or comply. Run or face it. Fine, he said coldly. Lead the way. They were escorted through the palace, 6 guards surrounding them. Arya's mind raced. This was a trap. Theron knew. Somehow he knew. They were led not to the council chambers, but to a private room she'd never seen. Ornate, windowless, and standing in the center, Theron, with a smile that promised death. My king, he said warmly. Thank you for coming so quickly. And I see you've brought our little problem with you. How convenient. Cassian released Arya's wrist, but positioned himself slightly in front of her. Protective. What is this about, he said. This is about trust, loyalty, and the consequences of betrayal. Theron gestured, and more guards filed in. Too many. All Theron's men. You see, I've suspected for some time that this Omega was not what she appeared. So I've been watching. Waiting. And tonight, I had cameras installed in my study. Arya's blood went cold. Cameras that recorded everything, Theron continued, including her breaking into my safe, stealing confidential documents, and most interestingly, her confession to you about her true identity.
He pulled out a small device.
Played audio. Duke Aldrich Sylvanus. Arya's voice. Clear as crystal. So you see, Your Majesty, you've been harboring the daughter of a traitor. A woman who admitted she came here for revenge. Who has been manipulating you, using your loneliness to get close. Theron's smile widened. The council has already been notified. They're convening now to discuss her execution. And your judgment, for being seduced by an enemy. Cashin's expression was carved from stone. You're threatening me? I'm protecting the kingdom, as I've always done. Theron stepped closer. Now you have a choice, my king. You can stand with this traitor's daughter, prove every rumor about your weakness true, and watch the council vote you unfit to rule. Or you can execute her yourself.
Right now.
Prove your loyalty to the crown, and we'll forget this ever happened. The room fell silent. Arya felt every eye on her, felt Cashin's presence beside her, radiating tension. She'd known this was possible, had accepted it might end this way. Do it, she said quietly. Cashin's head snapped toward her. What? Kill me. It's the only way you keep your throne. She met his eyes. And someone needs to stop Theron. If you're alive, you can. Arya. Please. Her voice cracked. My father would understand. Would want his death to mean something. For one terrible moment, she thought he'd actually do it. Saw him reach for the dagger at his belt. Saw his face harden into the mask of a king making an impossible choice. Then he smiled. Not at her. At Theron.
Cold. Deadly.
Absolutely terrifying. You know what I find interesting? Cashin said conversationally. You mentioned cameras in your study. But I never told you we were in your study. I only said I was busy. Theron's smile faltered. You knew we'd be there tonight. Which means you've been orchestrating this entire confrontation. Cashin pulled the satchel from his shoulder, opened it. The bloodstone glowed in his palm. And I'm guessing you really, really want this back. That belongs to nobody. According to legend, the bloodstone can't be owned. Only wielded by someone who believes designation hierarchy is a constructed lie. Cashin looked at it. Elena believed that. So does Arya. And you know what? After reading through your financial records and seeing exactly how you've been profiting from Omega oppression, I'm starting to believe it too. He closed his fist around the stone. The room exploded with light. Arya felt it like lightning through her veins. Power, ancient and absolute, flooding from the bloodstone through Cashin's body and outward in waves. The guard stumbled back. Theron cried out, shielding his face. And for one crystalline moment, every designation in the room equalized. She felt it. The biological imperative to submit to alphas gone. The natural fear Omegas carried, erased. Just humans. Just people. Then the light faded, and Cashin swayed. Arya caught him before he fell. What did you do? She breathed. Used it. Like Elena wanted. His voice was rough. The bloodstone doesn't overthrow alphas. It levels the playing field. But only temporarily. Minutes, maybe. Long enough, Lyra's voice said from the doorway. She stood there with 20 guards, Cashin's actual loyal men. All armed and ready. Took you long enough, Cashin said. You had to give me the signal first. Lyra smiled at Theron. Hello, my lord. Remember me? I was 8 years old when you destroyed the Sylvanus family. I've been waiting a long time for this. Theron backed away. You can't, the council. The council is currently being presented with all the evidence Arya stole from your safe, Lyra said. Documents that prove 2 decades of embezzlement, conspiracy, and murder. Including recordings from your actual surveillance system, the one you didn't know I'd been hacking for years. This is treason. No, Cashin said, straightening despite his exhaustion. This is justice. Finally. He nodded to Lyra. Arrest him. And anyone else on the council who's been part of this. Guards moved forward. Theron fought, but it was useless. Within minutes, he was in chains, being dragged away. The room cleared until only Cashin, Arya, and Lyra remained. "You planned this," Arya said.
How?
"I didn't. Not really." Cashin looked at her, and his expression was complicated. "But when I followed you tonight and saw what you were after, I realized I had a choice. I could be the king Theron had shaped me into, or I could be the king Elena believed I could become. You chose. I chose." He held out the bloodstone. "This belongs in your family. Your father discovered its location. Elena confirmed it. You found the proof." Arya stared at the stone. "What does it do, exactly?" "According to the texts Elena left behind, if used at the right place, the right time, it can permanently equalize all designations. Remove the biological hierarchy entirely. But the cost is enormous. The wielder dies." Silence fell. "Elena was going to use it," Arya said. "That's why Theron killed her." "Yes." Cashin's voice was barely a whisper. "She was going to sacrifice herself to free everyone. And I never knew. But now we have it. And Theron's arrested. We can."
No.
Cashin shook his head. "Having the stone isn't enough. Using it requires the lunar convergence, a celestial event that only happens once every 60 years. The next one is in 6 months. Then we have 6 months to prepare." "To prepare for what?" Lyra asked. "Are you actually suggesting we use it? That someone dies to break the designation system?" "Yes," Arya said. "No," Cashin said at the same time. They looked at each other. "Elena wanted this," Arya said. "My father died believing designation hierarchy could be changed. We have the evidence, the stone, the timing. We can actually do it. At the cost of someone's life. Some things are worth dying for. Not you." The words came out harsh. Cashin grabbed her shoulders. "Not you, Arya. I just found you. Just realized what you mean. I'm not watching you die for this. You don't get to decide that. Actually, I do. I'm the king. Not of me. You never were." They stared at each other, faces inches apart, breathing hard. And Arya realized with a jolt that somewhere along the way, this had stopped being about revenge or justice. It had become about him.
About them.
About something fragile and impossible that had grown in the spaces between hatred and understanding. "We'll find another way," Cashin said. "We have 6 months. We'll research. Find alternatives. Someone doesn't have to die. And if there isn't another way?" His hands tightened on her shoulders. "Then I'll do it." "Not you." "That's not negotiable." His eyes burned. "You've endured enough. Sacrificed enough. Let me do this." Lyra cleared her throat. "Not to interrupt what is clearly a very intense moment, but we still have about 50 guards loyal to Theron somewhere in this palace. Maybe we table the noble sacrifice debate until after we've secured the kingdom." Cashin released Arya, stepping back. "The king returning."
"Right."
"Lyra, take 20 men. Sweep the palace. Arrest anyone on this list." He pulled a piece of paper from his jacket. "I've known for months which council members were compromised. I just couldn't prove it until tonight." Lyra took the list, scanned it. "This is half the council. I know. Which means I'll need good people to replace them. Think you're up for the job." She blinked. "Me? You've spent 8 years infiltrating my palace, gathering evidence, waiting for justice. That takes skill, patience, and loyalty to something bigger than yourself." He smiled slightly. "I can use that." Lyra looked at Arya, who nodded. "All right," Lyra said. "But I have conditions." "Name them." "All Omega restriction laws get reviewed. The breeding registration program ends. And her sister, Celeste, gets full protection and education at palace expense." Cashin didn't hesitate.
"Done."
"Anything else?"
"Yeah."
"Stop using Omegas as your personal comfort rotation. It's disgusting." He had the grace to look ashamed. "Agreed. That policy is over." Lyra nodded once, then left to organize the arrests. Alone with Cashin, Arya felt the weight of everything that had happened crash over her.
I lied to you, she said.
Used you. Came here planning to destroy you. I know. I watched my father die because of an order you signed. I know. And now she stopped. Couldn't finish. Now you what? Cashin asked softly. I don't know anymore. I don't know what I feel. What I'm supposed to feel. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his hand curved against her cheek. You feel the same thing I do, he said. Confused. Angry. Scared. And something else. Something that grew between us despite everything. That's not enough.
No.
But it's a start. Arya closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. What happens now? Now we clean up this mess. Root out Theron's allies. Rebuild the council. Change the laws that hurt people.
He paused.
And we figure out what the Bloodstone means. Together. As what? King and prisoner. As partners. If you'll stay. She opened her eyes. You want me to stay? After everything? I want a lot of things. Most of them impossible. His thumb traced her cheekbone. But yes, I want you to stay. Help me fix what's broken. Build what Elena died trying to create. And in 6 months, when the convergence comes, we'll decide then, together. It wasn't a love confession. Wasn't forgiveness or absolution or anything simple. But it was real.
Honest.
A foundation they could maybe build on. Okay, Arya whispered. Cashin's expression softened. Then he did something that shocked her. He leaned forward and pressed his forehead to hers. Gentle, reverent. Thank you, he breathed. For enduring me. For seeing me. For giving me a chance to be better than what I've been. Arya's hands came up to grip his shirt. Holding him. Holding herself upright. Outside, dawn was breaking. And for the first time since her father's death, Arya felt something that might have been hope. Acknowledgement doesn't erase the past. It transforms how we carry it forward. Subscribe to Diya's romance library for stories where bonds are forged in the aftermath of betrayal, and where choosing to stay is the bravest act of all. The council chambers had never been designed to hold chaos, but chaos had arrived anyway. Arya stood in the gallery above, watching as Cashin presided over the emergency session. Below, half the council seats sat empty, their former occupants now imprisoned, awaiting trial for conspiracy, embezzlement, and murder. 3 days had passed since Theron's arrest. 3 days of raids, interrogations, and revelations that shook the kingdom's foundation. The people were rioting in the streets, some celebrating the corruption's exposure, others terrified of the instability. Cashin looked exhausted. He'd barely slept, working through mountains of evidence, signing new orders, trying to hold together a government that was collapsing from within. But he was still standing, still fighting. Arya felt something shift in her chest. Pride, maybe, or something more dangerous. You're staring. She turned to find Lyra beside her, now dressed in official council robes. The appointment had been swift. Cashin hadn't waited for tradition or protocol. He needed people he could trust, and Lyra had proven herself 100 times over. I'm observing, Arya said. Same thing. Lyra leaned against the railing. You know the nobles are talking. About you and him. Let them talk. They're saying you've bewitched him. That you're a Sylvanus spy who seduced the king to weaken his rule. Also not wrong, Arya admitted. Lyra laughed quietly.
Fair.
But they're also saying he's become dangerous. Unpredictable. That he's purging the council to install puppets. He's removing criminals. In their eyes, it's the same thing. Power is power. How you get it doesn't matter to most of them. Lyra's expression grew serious. Which means we need to move carefully. Theron had allies beyond the council. Military commanders. Noble houses. Merchants who profited from Omega oppression. What do you suggest? We need to show strength, unity, and we need to get ahead of the Bloodstone rumors before they spread. Arya stiffened. What rumors? That the king possesses an ancient weapon. That he used it against Theron. People saw the light, felt the power. Lyra's voice dropped. Fear makes people dangerous. If they think Cashin has something that can reshape the world, they'll either worship him or try to kill him. Probably both. Below, Cashin called for order as two council members started shouting at each other. His voice cut through the chaos like a blade, commanding absolute. The room fell silent. He's good at this, Arya murmured. When he's not drowning in grief and self-loathing, yes. Lyra studied her. You're helping with that, you know. He's different when he looks at you. Less like a ghost wearing a crown. I don't know what we are. Figure it out fast. Because the kingdom needs to see him as strong, stable, and in control. And right now, you're either his greatest strength or his most obvious weakness. That night, Cashin didn't send for her. For 3 nights running, he'd been too busy with council business, security briefings, emergency meetings. Arya told herself she didn't miss him. Didn't lie awake wondering if he was thinking about her too. But she did. Around midnight, she gave up on sleep and ventured into the palace. She'd been given freedom to move where she wanted now, no longer a prisoner, though what she was instead remained undefined. She found herself drawn to the gardens. The night was clear, cold, stars brilliant overhead. And sitting on a bench beneath an ancient oak, Cashin. He'd removed his crown again. His head was tipped back, eyes closed, face tilted toward the stars. He looked young like this. Almost peaceful. You're terrible at sneaking, he said without opening his eyes. Arya moved closer. I wasn't trying to sneak. Then why are you here? Couldn't sleep. You? Same. He opened his eyes, looking at her. I keep thinking about your father. About how I signed that order without question. Without investigating. I was so sure Theron wouldn't lie to me. You trusted him. I was lazy. Cowardly. His voice was bitter. I didn't want to deal with the complexity of ruling, so I let someone else make the hard decisions. And people died because of it. Arya sat beside him, careful to leave space between them. You were grieving Elena. Theron exploited that. That's not an excuse. No. But it's context. She paused. My father wouldn't have wanted you to destroy yourself with guilt. He would have wanted you to fix the system that allowed Theron to corrupt it. Cashin turned to her, and in the moonlight, his eyes were devastating. How are you this kind to me? After everything? I don't know. Maybe I'm tired of hating. Or maybe you're a better person than I deserve. I'm not good, Cashin. I came here for revenge. I would have killed you if I'd found the right moment. I know. That's what makes your choice to stay remarkable. His hand moved slowly across the bench, not quite touching hers. Close enough to feel the heat. I meant what I said. About wanting you to stay. To help me rebuild. As what? Whatever you want to be. His fingers brushed hers. Featherlight. Testing. Advisor. Ally. Friend. Is that what we are? Friends. I don't know. His voice dropped. I know I think about you constantly. Wonder if you're safe, if you're eating, if you regret not killing me when you had the chance. I know that when I look at you, I feel something I haven't felt since Elena died. Something that terrifies me. Arya's breath caught. What? Hope. He turned his hand palm up, an invitation. That maybe I can be more than what I've been. That maybe there's a way forward that doesn't end in loneliness and regret. She looked at his hand. At the calluses from sword work, the ink stains from endless documents, the scars from battles she didn't know about. A king's hand. A man's hand. She took it. His fingers closed around hers, warm and sure, and for a moment they just sat there, holding hands like children, like it was the most natural thing in the world. Tell me about Celeste, Cashin said. Your sister. So she did. Told him about the girl who loved stories and drew pictures in the margins of borrowed books, who dreamed of being a scholar despite being born Omega in a world that told her dreams were wasted on her designation. She sounds like you, Cashin said. She's better than me. Still believes the world can be good. We should bring her here, to the palace. Give her the education she wants. Arya's throat tightened. Why? Because she's your family. Because she deserves the opportunities Theron's system denied her. Because he stopped. Because I want to give you something that isn't pain or compromise. Something good. You don't owe me. I owe you everything. His grip tightened. You could have destroyed me. Instead, you gave me truth. That's a gift I can never repay. They sat in silence, hands linked, surrounded by garden shadows and starlight. And Arya felt something dangerous unfurling in her chest. Something that looked like forgiveness. Like possibility. Like the beginning of something that wasn't built on hate. There's a ball, Cashin said eventually. In 4 days. To celebrate the purification of the council. The nobles need reassurance that the kingdom is stable. Sounds tedious. Extremely. But necessary. He looked at her. I want you there. With me. Officially. As what? Your mistress? As my partner. My equal. His expression was fierce. Let them see that I value your counsel. That you're not some Omega plaything but someone with intelligence, strength, and my complete respect. That will cause talk.
Good.
Let them talk. Let them see that things are changing. He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. Will you come? The gesture was courtly, old-fashioned. Reverent in a way his previous touches never had been. It made her heart stutter. Yes, she whispered. His smile was small but real. Good. They stayed in the garden until dawn began coloring the sky. Talking quietly about Elena, about Arya's father, about the Bloodstone, and what it meant. Building something fragile and precious in the space between their damaged pasts. When they finally rose to leave, Cashin kept hold of her hand. Walked her back through the palace corridors as morning light spilled through windows. And when they reached her door, he hesitated. I want to kiss you, he said quietly. But not like before. Not as king to Omega or captor to prisoner. As equals. As, he searched for words. As two people who see each other. Really see each other. Arya's pulse hammered. Then do it. He cupped her face with both hands, his touch gentle. Asking permission even now. Then he leaned in and kissed her. It was nothing like their previous encounters. No desperation. No empty need. Just soft and careful and real. A first kiss, even though they'd touched 1,000 times before. When he pulled back, his eyes were bright. Vulnerable. Stay safe, he said.
Please.
Theron's allies are still out there. You too. He nodded once, then left. And Arya stood in her doorway, fingers pressed to her lips, feeling like the world had just shifted on its axis. The next 3 days passed in a blur. Cashin worked tirelessly to stabilize the council. New members were appointed, people with clean records and genuine desire to serve. Laws were reviewed, amended, softened. The Omega breeding registration program was suspended pending full repeal. Change was happening. Slowly but visibly. Arya spent her time in the archives, researching the Bloodstone with new urgency. If they were going to use it, if someone was going to sacrifice themselves, she needed to understand exactly what it did. What she found wasn't comforting. The ancient texts were clear. The lunar convergence would amplify the Bloodstone's power enough to permanently alter designation biology across the entire kingdom. But the price was absolute. The wielder's life force would fuel the transformation. No exceptions. No loopholes. Someone would die to free everyone else. She was transcribing a particularly complex passage when Lyra found her. We have a problem, she said without preamble. Arya looked up. What kind? The military kind. General Vaughn, one of Theron's appointees, has taken 3 battalions and marched toward the capital. He's demanding Theron's release and the king's abdication. Cold dread pooled in Arya's stomach. When will they arrive? 2 days. Right before the ball. Lyra's expression was grim. We have maybe 1,000 loyal soldiers in the capital. Vaughn has 3,000. And he's well supplied, well trained. What does Cashin say? He's preparing defenses. But we're outnumbered. If it comes to battle, we'll lose. Arya stood, her mind racing. There has to be another way. Negotiation, maybe.
Or,
There's no negotiating with Vaughn. He's a true believer in designation hierarchy. Thinks Omegas are property and Alphas are gods. He'll never accept the changes Cassion's making. Then we make him. Arya grabbed the bloodstone from where she'd been keeping it, wrapped in cloth, hidden in her research materials. The convergence is in 6 months. But maybe we don't need the full power. Maybe a smaller demonstration. Would do what? Kill you and change nothing? Would show them what's possible. Show Vaughn's soldiers that designation hierarchy isn't natural law. Arya's voice hardened. Fear keeps the system in place. If we break that fear, even temporarily, maybe they'll stand down. Or maybe you'll die for nothing. Maybe. Arya met her eyes. But I'm willing to try. Cassion will never allow it. Then we don't tell him until it's done. Lyra stared at her for a long moment. Then she sighed. You've changed, she said quietly. 3 weeks ago you wanted the king dead. Now you're planning to sacrifice yourself to save his throne. I'm not doing this for his throne. I'm doing it because if Vaughn wins, everything changes. Omega oppression gets worse. The council reverts to corruption. People suffer. Arya's hands tightened on the bloodstone. My father died fighting the system. Elena died researching how to break it. I won't let their deaths mean nothing. You're in love with him, Lyra said. Not a question. Arya wanted to deny it.
couldn't.
Yes, she whispered. Does he know? I don't know. Maybe. She looked at the stone in her hands. But it doesn't matter. Some things are bigger than love. Lyra was quiet. Then, if you're going to do this, you'll need help. The bloodstone requires ancient words, a specific ritual, and it needs to be somewhere significant, a place where power converges. Where? The old temple, in the forest outside the city. It was built on a convergence point where ley lines meet. Elena's notes mentioned it. Lyra's expression was pained. I'll help you prepare. But Arya, if this goes wrong, if you die for nothing, then at least I died trying. That's more than most people get. The ball was scheduled for the following evening. Arya spent the day preparing, not just for the event, but for what would come after. Lyra helped her practice the ritual words, memorize the gestures. They had one shot at this. One chance to use the bloodstone's power without the full convergence. It might work. It might do nothing. It might kill her instantly. But it was the only plan they had. As evening approached, servants arrived with a dress. Not the simple clothes she'd been wearing. This was a gown fit for nobility. Deep green silk, embroidered with silver thread that caught the light like stars. From the king, the head servant said. He wants you to wear his family colors. Arya stared at it. Green and silver, the Blackthorn house colors. He was claiming her publicly, telling the nobility she was under his protection, his equal. She dressed carefully, her hand shaking. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. She looked like a lady, like someone who belonged in palace halls, like someone worth saving a kingdom for. A knock at her door. She opened it to find Cassion, dressed in formal black and silver, his crown gleaming on his dark hair. He looked devastating, powerful, every inch a king. His eyes widened when he saw her. Arya. Her name came out reverent. You're presentable, stunning. He stepped inside, closing the door. His hands came up to frame her face. You take my breath away. She smiled despite everything, despite knowing what she planned to do later. You clean up well yourself. The crown helps. He kissed her forehead. Gentle. Are you ready for this? The nobles will be watching, judging. Let them watch. That's my girl. The words landed like a brand. My girl. Possessive and protective at once. And Arya realized she didn't mind. Wanted to be his, in ways that had nothing to do with ownership and everything to do with choice. Cassion, she said softly. No matter what happens tonight. Nothing will happen. I have security everywhere. You'll be safe. But if something does, if things go wrong. She gripped his hands. Know that I don't regret this. Any of it. Not staying, not trusting you, not. Her voice broke. Not falling for you. His expression transformed. Hope and pain and something fierce. Say that again, he breathed. Which part? The last part. Arya's heart hammered. I've fallen for you. Despite everything. Despite how it started. I look at you and see. She searched for words. I see someone worth fighting for. Worth believing in. Cashin pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. I love you, he said against her ear. I know I shouldn't. I know it's too fast, too complicated. But I do. I love you, Arya Sylvanus. And I will spend every day proving I'm worthy of that gift. She clung to him, memorizing this moment. His heartbeat. His warmth. The way he held her like she was precious beyond measure. Because after tonight, everything might change. After tonight, she might be gone. I love you too, she whispered. They stood there, holding each other, until duty called them to the ballroom. Until they had to put on their public faces and pretend everything was simple. Until Arya had to prepare to break his heart to save his kingdom. Love is not the absence of sacrifice. It's what makes sacrifice meaningful. Subscribe to Diya's Romance Library for stories where the hardest choice is not between love and duty, but between the person you love and the world they're trying to save. The ballroom glittered like a cage made of diamonds. Arya stood beside Cashin at the top of the grand staircase, feeling hundreds of eyes on her. The nobles below were dressed in their finest, silks and jewels and centuries of inherited wealth. And all of them were staring at the poor Omega who'd somehow become the king's chosen companion. She could hear the whispers. Bewitched him. Sylvanus's daughter. Scandal. Inappropriate. Cashin's hand found hers. Held tight. Breathe, he murmured. They can smell fear. I'm not afraid of them. I know. That's why they're afraid of you. He was right. The whispers weren't just scandalous. They were nervous. Because an Omega standing beside the king as an equal disrupted everything these people believed about natural order.
Good.
Cashin raised his voice, projecting to the crowd. Lords and ladies, thank you for attending tonight's celebration. As you know, recent weeks have brought significant changes to our council and government. Changes that were necessary to root out corruption and restore justice. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some approving. Most uncertain. I know many of you are concerned about stability, Cashin continued. About tradition. About whether I'm fit to rule after everything that's been revealed. He paused. Those concerns are valid. And I address them now by introducing someone who has my complete trust and respect. He turned to Arya, his expression proud. This is Arya Sylvanus, daughter of Duke Aldrich Sylvanus, who was wrongly executed for treason he didn't commit. She has spent weeks helping me uncover the conspiracy that corrupted this kingdom, and she will serve as my chief advisor going forward. The ballroom erupted. Shouts of protest. Gasps of shock. One elderly lord actually fainted. Arya stood there, frozen, as chaos bloomed around them. Your Majesty, this is madness, someone yelled. She's an Omega. She's also brilliant, educated, and more loyal than half the people in this room. Cashin shot back. She stays. Non-negotiable. But the council serves at my pleasure. As do all of you. His voice went cold. Command absolute. Anyone who finds that arrangement unacceptable may leave. Permanently. Silence fell. Arya squeezed his hand once. Warning, gratitude, love, then stepped forward. I know what you think of me, she said, her voice carrying. That I seduced the king. That I'm a spy. That my father was a traitor. She met their eyes, unflinching. You're wrong about most of it. But here's something true. I came to this palace planning revenge. And I stayed because I found something worth saving. She gestured to Cashin. This king. This kingdom. The possibility that designation hierarchy doesn't have to define us forever. That Omegas can be more than breeding stock. That alphas can choose kindness over dominance. That change is possible. Pretty words, A woman's voice called out. But words don't change biology. Don't change what we are. No, Arya agreed. But they can change what we do with what we are. Before anyone could respond, the ballroom doors burst open. Guards rushed in, their faces panicked. And behind them, soldiers. Dozens of them.
Armed.
Wearing General Vaughn's colors. The crowd scattered, screaming. Cashin moved instantly, putting himself between Arya and the threat. His hand went to the sword at his hip. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. A man stepped through the soldiers. Tall, gray-haired, with a face carved from granite. General Vaughn. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice dripping false respect. "I've come to restore order. To free Lord Theron and the other council members you've imprisoned unjustly." "They're not imprisoned unjustly. They're criminals. They're patriots who understood what you refused to accept, that Omegas need control. That tradition maintains stability." Vaughn's eyes flicked to Arya. "And you've let one of them poison your mind, seduce you into weakness. Choose your next words carefully, General. Or what? You'll have me arrested too?" Vaughn smiled. "I have 3,000 soldiers outside this palace. You have a few hundred. Surrender now. Abdicate peacefully, and I'll let you live in exile. Refuse, and we take the palace by force." The remaining nobles in the ballroom held their breath, waiting to see which side would win. Cashin stood taller.
No.
"I'm sorry.
No.
I won't surrender. Won't abdicate. Won't let people like you drag this kingdom backward." His hand tightened on his sword. "If you want my throne, General, you'll have to kill me for it." Vaughn's expression went flat. "So be it." He raised his hand, signaling his men to attack. Everything exploded into chaos. Cashin fought like something feral. His sword flashed in the ballroom's crystal light, cutting down Vaughn's soldiers with brutal efficiency. Around him, his loyal guards fought desperately against overwhelming numbers. Arya was dragged behind a pillar by Lyra, who'd appeared from nowhere with a knife in each hand. "This is it," Lyra said. "Now or never. If we're going to use the Bloodstone." "I know." Arya pulled the stone from where she'd hidden it in her dress. It pulsed with light, responding to the violence around them. "The temple? I'll cover you. Go." "But Cashin will die if Vaughn's forces take the palace. You want to save him? Use the stone. Show everyone what's possible. Make them see designation hierarchy for the lie it is." Lyra gripped her shoulders. "I'll hold them here as long as I can. Get to the temple. Do the ritual. And if you survive, come back and save us all." Arya nodded, tears burning her eyes. Then she ran. Through the chaos, through corridors filling with smoke and blood, out into the gardens and beyond. Behind her, she heard Cashin shout her name, heard him fighting to reach her. But Lyra would stop him, would make him focus on the battle, would buy Arya the time she needed, even if it meant lying to the king they both served. The forest was dark, moonless. Arya ran until her lungs burned, following paths Lyra had made her memorize. The temple appeared like a ghost, crumbling stone columns, overgrown with vines, ancient beyond measure. In its center, a stone altar. Arya climbed onto it, the bloodstone blazing in her hands. She could feel power thrumming through the ground beneath her. Ley lines converging. Energy waiting to be directed. She began the ritual words. Ancient Lorien, older than kingdoms. Calling on powers that predated designation hierarchy. That remembered when wolves and humans were just different expressions of the same soul. The bloodstone grew hot. Burning. She kept chanting. Light exploded outward from the stone, spreading through the forest, racing toward the capital. And Arya felt it, her life force being drawn into the magic, fueling the transformation. It hurt. Gods, it hurt. But she kept going, kept channeling, because this was it. This was the moment Elena had died trying to reach. The moment her father had believed was possible. The moment that could change everything. The light reached the palace, flooded through its walls. And for one crystalline moment, Every designation in the capital equalized. Alphas lost their dominance. Omegas lost their submission. Everyone became just human. In the palace, Vaughn's soldiers faltered. The biological imperative to follow alpha commands, gone. They looked at each other, confused.
Free.
And some of them lowered their weapons. Arya felt her consciousness fading. The ritual was taking too much, demanding more than she had to give. Worth it, she thought. If this works, if they see what's possible, then someone grab her. Strong hands pulling her off the altar, breaking the ritual. The light flickered, destabilized. Stop. What are you doing? She looked up through blurring vision and saw him. Cassian. He was covered in blood, not all his own, breathing hard, his eyes wild with panic and fury. You are killing yourself, he snarled. Did you really think I wouldn't notice you running? Wouldn't follow? The ritual, I need to finish. Not at the cost of your life. He grabbed the bloodstone from her hands, and it pulsed angrily, rejecting him. There has to be another way. There isn't. The texts are clear. Then the texts are wrong. He held her face, his hands shaking.
You don't get to die.
Not for me, not for the kingdom, not for anything. Do you hear me, Arya? I won't allow it. You don't get to decide. Yes, I do. I'm the king, and I'm ordering you to live. She wanted to laugh, wanted to cry. That's not how this works. Then tell me how it works. Tell me there's another option. Arya's vision swam. The partial ritual had drained her, left her weak.
But she'd seen something.
Felt something when the light had spread. 2 people, she whispered. If 2 people wield it together, share the cost. The texts mentioned it once. A bonded pair, combined life force. Cassian went still. How bonded? Mated.
True mates.
The kind of bond that transcends designation. Like Elena and I were. Like he stopped. Looked at her with dawning realization. Like what we're becoming. We're not mated yet. Not officially. Not with the ceremony and the bite and then we do it.
Now.
Here. His voice was absolute. I claim you. You claim me. And we wield this thing together. Cassian, you could still die. Then I die with you. Saving the kingdom we both love. Building the future your father and Elena dreamed of. He pulled her close. I'm not losing you, Arya. Not after finally finding you. So either we both live, or we both die. Choose. She looked at him. This broken, beautiful king who'd somehow become her home. Who'd changed from monster to man in the space of a few weeks. Who loved her enough to die with her. Together, she breathed. Together.
He kissed her then.
Not gentle. Not careful. Desperate and claiming and real. And she felt it, the bond snapping into place. Recognized on some fundamental level that he was hers and she was his. Forever. He bit her neck, marking her. She bit him back. The ancient way. The way that said mine, yours, ours. Then they both gripped the bloodstone. The power hit like lightning. Doubled now, shared between them, but still devastating. Arya screamed. Cassian roared. And the light exploded outward again, brighter, stronger, reaching across the entire kingdom. She felt designations shift. Felt biological hierarchy crack, and reform into something fluid, something chosen rather than inborn. Felt the world change. Then darkness took her, and she knew nothing more. The greatest power is not what you're willing to die for, it's who you're willing to live for, even when living means sharing the unbearable weight of sacrifice. Subscribe to Diya's Romance Library for stories where true mates are forged in fire, and where love is measured not in romance, but in the willingness to carry impossible burdens together. Arya woke to pain. Not the burning agony of the bloodstone ritual, but a deep, bone-aching exhaustion that suggested her body had been pushed beyond its limits and barely survived. She was in a bed. Soft sheets.
Warm.
Alive.
Alive.
Memory flooded back. The temple. The ritual. Cassian arriving, stopping her. The mating bond. Wielding the bloodstone together. Cassian. Here. She turned her head. Even that small movement hurt, and found him beside her, in a chair pulled close to the bed, looking like death warmed over. His face was pale, drawn, shadows under his eyes suggesting he hadn't slept in days. But he was breathing, moving,
Alive.
"You're okay," she whispered. "Define okay." His smile was weak. "But yes, we both survived. Barely." "How long?" "3 days. You've been unconscious for 3 days." His hand found hers, gripping tight. "I woke up yesterday. Spent every hour since then sitting here, waiting for you to open your eyes." Arya squeezed his hand back. The kingdom changed fundamentally. He helped her sit up, propping pillows behind her. The bloodstone ritual worked. Not completely, designation biology still exists, but it's fluid now. Omegas aren't compelled to submit. Alphas aren't driven to dominate. Everyone has choice. And Vaughn surrendered. When his soldiers suddenly weren't biologically bound to follow his alpha commands, most of them just stopped fighting, laid down their weapons. Some left, some stayed, and asked to join the new order. Cashin's expression was complicated. Turns out a lot of them were just following instinct, not conviction. Without that instinct, free will. Exactly. He paused. Vaughn himself is in a cell next to Theron. They'll both stand trial for their crimes, along with 37 other nobles who are part of the conspiracy. Arya processed that. And the council? Rebuilding. Half are new appointments, people who actually care about justice. Lyra is leading the reform efforts. She's terrifying and efficient. He smiled slightly. Your sister is here, by the way, in the palace. She's been visiting every day, reading to you while you slept. Tears burned Arya's eyes. Celeste is safe. More than safe. She's enrolled in the Palace Academy. Has already made 3 friends and intimidated 2 tutors with how much she knows. His thumb traced circles on her hand. She's extraordinary, like her sister. I need to see her.
Soon.
But first we need to talk. About what we did. What it means. Arya met his eyes. We're mated.
Yes.
Fully bonded. Which means several things. He counted on his fingers. 1. You're now officially the queen consort. The council ratified it while you were unconscious. Nobody dared oppose me with the bloodstone ritual fresh in their minds. 2. We need to have an actual wedding ceremony at some point because tradition and politics. 3. He stopped. 3. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. And I need you to understand what you've done. What I've done. You saved me. Saved the kingdom. Broke a system that had caused centuries of suffering. You're a hero, Arya. We did it together. You started it, planned it, risked everything. His voice roughened. And when I think about how close I came to losing you, how you were going to sacrifice yourself without even telling me, you would have stopped me. Damn right I would have. He leaned forward, his face inches from hers. Don't ever do that again. Don't ever decide my life is worth more than yours. We're partners now. Equals. That means we make these decisions together. Even if it means you die, even then, I'd rather die beside you than live without you. Arya's heart clenched. That's terrifying. That's love. He kissed her forehead. Gentle. Now rest. You're still recovering and... A knock at the door interrupted him. Come in, Cashin called. Lyra entered, looking official in her new council robes. Behind her, Celeste, her sister, flew across the room, practically tackling Arya in an embrace. She was taller than Arya remembered, all gangly limbs and wild curls, smelling like books and ink. You're awake. Finally. I've been so worried, and they wouldn't let me stay overnight, and the healers kept saying you'd be fine, but you looked so pale, and Celeste pulled back, tears streaming. Don't ever scare me like that again. I'll try, Arya said, her own tears falling. Gods, look at you. You're practically grown. I'm 14, not a child. But December 22nd. Celeste's indignant tone was undermined by how she clung to Arya's hand. The palace tutors say I'm ahead in everything except mathematics, but I'm working on it. And Lyra's been teaching me self-defense, and there's this library that has books I've only dreamed about, and she stopped, seeming to remember something.
Oh.
And congratulations on becoming queen. That's unexpected. Arya laughed, the sound rough but real. For me too. Cassian stood, giving them space. I'll let you two catch up. Lyra, walk with me? They left, and Celeste immediately climbed onto the bed, curling against Arya's side like she used to when she was small. I thought you were dead, Celeste whispered. When they brought you back from the forest, you were so pale, not breathing right. And the king looked, she shuddered. I've never seen anyone look like that, like his soul was dying. He's dramatic. He loves you. Celeste looked up at her. Really loves you. The way Papa loved Mama before she died. Like you're his whole world. Arya's throat tightened. Their parents had been true mates too. Had loved each other with the kind of devotion that made losing one unbearable for the other. Their mother had died of fever when Celeste was born. Their father had survived another 8 years, but part of him had gone to the grave with his mate. I love him too, Arya admitted. Which is complicated considering. Considering he signed Papa's execution order? Celeste's voice was quiet. I know. Lyra told me everything. About Theron. About how Papa was framed. About how the king didn't know. Does that make it better? I don't know. Maybe. Celeste was quiet for a moment. Papa always said that good people could do terrible things if they trusted the wrong advisors. That kings were only as just as the counsel they kept. He wouldn't want you to hate someone who was manipulated. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just didn't notice because you were busy planning revenge. Celeste poked her. But I'm glad you didn't go through with it. Glad you found something better than hate. Me too. They lay there in comfortable silence until Celeste eventually fell asleep, exhausted from days of worry. Arya held her sister and stared at the ceiling, processing everything that had changed. She was alive. Cassian was alive. The kingdom had transformed. And somehow, against all probability, she'd found not just justice but love. It felt too good to be real, which meant something would go wrong. It always did. The next morning, Arya was strong enough to walk. Cassian insisted on escorting her personally, ignoring the healer's protests that she should rest longer. They moved through the palace slowly, and Arya saw the changes everywhere. Omega servants moved with their heads up now, not cowering, not automatically submitting when alphas passed. Some still deferred. Habit and culture didn't change overnight, but others met eyes, spoke firmly, existed with dignity. In the training yards, she saw female soldiers drilling alongside male ones. Omegas and alphas sparring as equals. The biological compulsion that had made alphas naturally dominant in combat gone. Now it was just skill against skill. It's working, she said softly. It's chaos, Cassian corrected. But productive chaos. The kind that might actually lead somewhere better. He guided her toward a building she hadn't seen before. There's something I want to show you. Inside was a chamber set up like a courtroom, and sitting in the defendant's box, flanked by guards. Theron. He looked smaller than she remembered, diminished by imprisonment and the loss of power. But his eyes still held calculation as they entered. Your Majesty, he said mockingly, and the little Omega who destroyed everything. How touching. You're being tried today, Cassian said flatly. For conspiracy, embezzlement, and the murders of Elena Blackthorne and Duke Aldrich Sylvanus, among others. Murders you can't prove. Actually, we can. Lyra stepped forward, carrying a box. Remember your personal safe? The one you thought only you could access? Arya wasn't the first person to break into it. I'd been photographing documents for years, including these. She pulled out letters, vials, chemical analysis reports. Poison, Lyra said. The same compound used to kill Elena. Found in your possession, along with correspondence detailing payment to the physician who administered it. And here, she held up another document. Evidence fabrication plans for Duke Sylvanus's treason trial. In your handwriting. Theron's face went gray. You're finished, Cashin said quietly. The council votes on your sentence this afternoon. Execution or exile. Either way, you'll never hurt anyone again. You self-righteous fool. Theron's composure cracked. You think you've won? You think changing designation biology solves anything? You've destabilized centuries of order. Made Omegas think they're equal when they're just human. Arya interrupted. That's what you can't stand, isn't it? The idea that we're just people. That the hierarchy you profited from was a lie you convinced everyone to believe. It wasn't a lie. It was nature.
No.
It was biology you weaponized into oppression. She stepped closer to the defendant's box. My father saw through it. Elena saw through it. And now everyone will see through it. Your legacy isn't power, Theron. It's exposure as the small, petty man who murdered good people to maintain a comfortable lie. Theron lunged at the box's bars, snarling. Guards restrained him. Get him out of here, Cashin ordered. And make sure the trial is public. Everyone should see justice served. As Theron was dragged away, still screaming about tradition and natural order, Arya felt something release in her chest. Not quite closure. Her father was still dead, Elena was still gone, but acknowledgement. Recognition that the man who destroyed so many lives would finally face consequences. Thank you, she said to Cashin, for letting me see that. You deserve to face him, to see him powerless. He took her hand. The trial will be brutal. Graphic details. Witness testimony. Are you sure you want to attend?
Yes.
I owe it to my father, to Elena, to everyone he hurt. Then we'll sit through it together. The trial lasted 3 days. Arya sat beside Cashin in the gallery, listening as witness after witness testified to Theron's crimes. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. Decades of exploitation, murder, manipulation. At least 15 deaths could be directly attributed to Theron's orders. Elena's physician testified through tears, explaining how Theron had threatened his family unless he poisoned the queen. How he'd lived with guilt for 3 years, too terrified to speak. The council member who'd fabricated evidence against Arya's father confessed in exchange for clemency. Detailed exactly how they'd planted documents, bribed witnesses, constructed an airtight case against an innocent man. By the 3rd day, even Theron's most ardent supporters had gone silent. The council's verdict was unanimous. Execution. Cashin signed the order with a steady hand. No hesitation. When he set down the pen, he looked at Arya. Is this justice? He asked quietly. Or just revenge? Both, maybe. Does it matter? I don't know. I just know that every time I sign an execution order now, I think about your father. About how I did this before without question. Without investigation. His jaw tightened. It terrifies me. How easy it was to kill an innocent man. How close I came to never knowing the truth. Arya took his hand. But you know now. And you're changing things. That's what matters. Is it enough? I don't know. But it's something. Theron was executed at dawn the next day. Arya didn't attend. She'd seen enough death. But Cashin did, standing witness as the man who'd corrupted his kingdom took his final breath. When he returned, he looked older. Tired. But also lighter somehow. Like he'd set down a weight he'd been carrying too long. It's done, he said simply. Arya pulled him into an embrace. He held her tight, his face buried in her hair, and they stood there in silence. Processing. Grieving. Accepting. 2 weeks later, Lyra found Arya in the archives. We have a problem, she said. Arya looked up from the ancient texts she'd been studying. What kind? The good kind, actually. The bloodstone ritual worked better than we expected. Designation fluidity is spreading beyond the capital. Reports are coming in from provinces across the kingdom, Omegas refusing traditional bonds, Alphas stepping back from leadership roles, entire social structures reorganizing. That's good. Yes. But also complicated. Some regions are embracing it. Others are resisting. And there's been violence. Traditionalists attacking Omegas who assert independence, progressive groups retaliating. Lyra's expression was grim. We're on the verge of civil war. Different factions with different visions of what the kingdom should become. Arya's stomach dropped. What does Cashin say? He's in emergency council sessions, trying to craft policies that acknowledge the changes without forcing conformity. But it's like trying to hold water. The situation keeps shifting. Lyra paused. We need you. Your voice. The person who wielded the bloodstone and survived carries weight. If you speak about what we're trying to build. I'm not a politician.
No.
You're something better. You're someone who lived through the worst of the old system and fought to change it. People will listen to you in ways they won't listen to the king. Arya thought about her father, about Elena, about all the people who died fighting for change. What do you need me to do? Tour the provinces. Speak to communities. Help them understand that designation fluidity doesn't mean chaos. It means choice. That we're not destroying tradition. We're evolving it. Lyra met her eyes. Be the bridge between what was and what could be. When would I leave? Tomorrow, ideally. The longer we wait, the worse the violence gets. Arya nodded slowly. I'll talk to Cashin. He didn't take it well. Absolutely not, Cashin said flatly. You nearly died 2 weeks ago. You're still recovering. And you want to travel through hostile territories where traditionalists would love to kill the person who corrupted their king. They were in his private chambers, the fire burning low. Arya had waited until they were alone to raise Lyra's proposal. I'm not asking permission, she said carefully. I'm telling you what I need to do. Then I'm telling you no. You can't forbid me. I'm your mate and your king. I can absolutely forbid you. Arya's eyes narrowed. Careful. That sounds like the old alpha dominance talking. Cashin flinched.
Took a breath.
You're right.
I'm sorry.
But Arya, please. The provinces are dangerous right now. Unpredictable. If something happened to you, then you'd have loyal guards and healers with me. Lyra would come. We'd be careful. She moved closer, taking his hands. I know you're afraid. I am too. But we can't hide in the palace while the kingdom tears itself apart. We changed things. Now we have to guide those changes. Together. Together means you stay here, safe, where I can protect you.
No.
Together means we both do the hard thing. You handle the council and the nobility. I handle the people. We divide the work because it's too much for one person. She cupped his face. Trust me. Trust that I'm strong enough for this. Cashin closed his eyes, his jaw working. I can't lose you. You won't. I promise I'll come back. You can't promise that.
No.
But I can promise I'll fight like hell to keep that promise. She kissed him softly. Let me do this. Let me be your queen in more than name.
He was silent for a long time.
Then, 2 conditions. Name them. 1, Lyra and a full security detail go with you. Non-negotiable. Agreed. 2, you write me every day. Every single day, or I'm writing out personally to drag you back. Deal. He pulled her close, holding her like he could keep her safe through sheer force of will. When do you leave? Tomorrow. Of course you do. He kissed the top of her head. One more night, then. Let me have one more night. They went to bed early. Not for sex, but for closeness. Lying tangled together, talking quietly about everything and nothing. About the future they were trying to build. About the family they might have someday. About hope and fear, and all the complicated emotions that came with loving someone during a revolution. Whatever happens, Cashin murmured as she drifted toward sleep, know that you changed my world. Made me better than I was. Gave me reasons to fight for something beyond survival. Same, Arya whispered back. You were supposed to be my enemy. Instead, you became my home. Poetic. Shut up and sleep, Your Majesty. His quiet laugh was the last thing she heard before darkness took her. Dawn came too fast. Arya dressed in travel clothes, practical, sturdy, nothing queenly about them. She braided her hair tight, checked her pack 3 times, tried not to look at Cashin, who was watching her with barely concealed anguish. I'll be back in 6 weeks, she said. Maybe 8 if the mountain provinces are difficult. 8 weeks is too long. It's necessary. I know. Doesn't make it easier. They walked together to the courtyard, where Lyra waited with 20 guards and a small caravan of supplies. Celeste was there too, looking fierce despite obvious worry. Stay safe, her sister said. And if anyone gives you trouble, remember what I taught you about knee strikes. You taught me that yesterday. And it's already invaluable knowledge. Arya hugged her tight. Study hard. Don't intimidate the tutors too much. No promises. Then Cashin pulled her aside, out of earshot. If at any point you feel unsafe, he said quietly, you send word. Immediately. I don't care if it compromises the mission or makes me look weak. Your life matters more than politics. I'll be careful. Not enough. Be paranoid. Suspicious. Ruthless. His hands framed her face. Be the survivor who endured everything to get here. That's the woman I need coming back to me. I will. I promise. He kissed her then, deep and claiming and desperate, pouring everything he couldn't say into that contact. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. I love you, he said. I love you too. Don't burn down the kingdom while I'm gone. No promises. She mounted her horse, settled into the saddle. Lyra gave the signal, and the caravan began moving. Arya looked back once, saw Cashin standing in the courtyard, backlit by a rising sun, looking every inch the powerful king he was. But his eyes held only her, only fear and love and the kind of faith that required daily choice. She raised her hand. He raised his. Then she turned forward and rode toward whatever waited in the provinces, toward danger and duty and the next chapter of the revolution they'd started together. Love is not standing still in safety, it's choosing to move forward into danger, because some missions are bigger than fear. Subscribe to Diya's romance library for stories where queens are forged in fire, and where the hardest part of partnership is learning to let go while holding on with everything you have. The provinces were worse than Arya had imagined. In some villages, they were welcomed as saviors. Omegas wept with gratitude, alphas cautiously hopeful about a future where strength didn't require dominance. She spoke in town squares, explained the changes, listened to concerns. In others, they barely escaped with their lives. The 5th village they visited had seemed promising at first. The local lord invited them to dinner, expressed interest in the new policies. Then, halfway through the meal, guards surrounded them. You poisoned our way of life, the Lord said coldly. Made Omegas think they're people. Made our children question natural order. For that, you'll die. They fought their way out. Lost 3 guards in the process. Arya still had nightmares about the young soldier who'd taken an arrow meant for her. By the 4th week, even Lyra looked exhausted. Maybe we should head back, she suggested as they made camp in yet another hostile territory. Regroup. Try a different approach. We're making progress, Arya insisted. Slowly, but we're making enemies. Every traditionalist lord we confront becomes another potential ally for whatever counter-revolution is brewing. Lyra stared into the fire. And there is one brewing. I can feel it. She was right. Arya had felt it too, the sense of something building. Whispers of a coalition forming. Lords and generals who rejected the Bloodstone's changes, who wanted to restore natural order. 3 more villages, Arya said. Then we'll go back. I promise. But that night, a messenger arrived. Exhausted. Bleeding from a wound in his side. He collapsed at Arya's feet, gasping. The capital, under siege. General Marcus, 3 armies. Arya's blood went cold. How long? Started 2 days ago. The king, holding, but the messenger's eyes rolled back. He passed out. Their healer rushed forward, but Arya was already moving. Pack everything. We ride for the capital. Now. That's a 5-day journey at speed, Lyra protested. And we don't know what we're riding into. Cashin is under attack. That's all I need to know. Within an hour, They were riding hard through the darkness, pushing horses to their limits, racing against time and fear and the terrible certainty that everything they'd built was about to burn. They reached the capital on the third day and found a war zone. 3 armies surrounded the palace, thousands of soldiers bearing the colors of traditionalist houses. Siege engines battered the walls. Fires burned in the lower city. And over it all, a banner flew that made Arya's heart stop. Black Wolf on Red Field. General Marcus Vaughn's cousin and successor. He's come for revenge, Lyra breathed. For Theron. For Vaughn. For the old order. Arya studied the siege lines, her tactical training kicking in. Can we break through? Not directly. But there's a smuggler's tunnel, leads under the eastern wall, into the palace undercroft. If it's not collapsed, show me. They left the horses with half their guards and moved on foot, through rubble and smoke, past bodies, both soldiers and civilians. The siege had turned parts of the capital into a killing ground. The tunnel entrance was hidden in a burned-out tavern. They descended into darkness, moving by touch and memory. The walls were slick with moisture, the air thick with the smell of earth and old death. If this collapses, one guard muttered, we're dead. Then move faster, Arya said. They emerged in the palace undercroft. Immediately, sounds of battle echoed from above, sword against sword, screaming, the crash of something massive hitting stone. Arya raced upward, taking stairs 3 at a time. Lyra and the guards followed. They burst into a corridor filled with fighting. Palace guards defending desperately against invaders in Marcus's colors. Blood on marble floors. Bodies piled against walls. Arya grabbed a sword from a fallen guard and dove into the fight. She wasn't trained like Cassian or Lyra, but desperation made her efficient. She fought with everything, sword, fists, teeth when necessary. Protecting guards, clearing paths, moving deeper into the palace. Toward the throne room. Toward Cassian. They reached it to find the doors barricaded from inside. Massive furniture piled against them. Through the wood, she could hear continued fighting. Break it down, Arya ordered. Her guards slammed into the doors.
Once. Twice.
On the third impact, the barricade shattered. Inside was carnage. The throne room had become a last stand. Cassian fought at the center, surrounded by his remaining loyal guards, maybe 40 left. They were vastly outnumbered by Marcus's forces, easily 200 soldiers pressing in. But Cassian was magnificent. Even exhausted, even bleeding from a dozen wounds, he fought like something divine. His sword flashed, cutting down enemies with brutal precision. Around him, his guards held their formation, protecting each other, refusing to break. Then Cassian's eyes found hers across the room. For one heartbeat, his control slipped. Relief and love and desperate hope flooded his expression. Arya. A soldier used his distraction, swinging hard. Cassian barely blocked, forced backward. Focus on the fight. Arya screamed. I'm here, I'm alive, so keep living, damn you. She charged into the fray, Lyra at her side. Their reinforcements crashed into Marcus's soldiers from behind, creating chaos in the enemy ranks. The tide shifted. Not much, but enough. Arya fought her way toward Cassian, leaving bodies in her wake. When she finally reached him, he grabbed her with his free hand, pulled her close for one fierce moment. You came back, he gasped. Always. Now, where's Marcus? Command tent. Outside. Coward won't face me directly. Then we bring the fight to him. Cassian's smile was feral. That's my queen. Together, they rallied the defenders, pushed toward the throne room doors. The plan was insane. Charge out into the siege lines, fight through to Marcus's command tent, and this with a single strike. But insane was all they had left. They burst through the doors and into hell. The palace grounds were packed with enemy soldiers. Thousands. The moment Cassian appeared, they roared and charged. For the kingdom, Cassian bellowed. For freedom, his guards answered with their own war cry and followed. The fighting became a blur. Arya lost track of time, of individual enemies, of everything except survival and the need to reach that command tent. She fought beside Cashin, their movements synchronized through the mating bond. When he was open on the left, she covered. When she was pressed too hard, he was there. They moved as one entity, deadly and devoted in equal measure. Then they broke through. The command tent stood before them, guarded by Marcus's elite soldiers. But nothing could stop them now. They cut through the guards and burst inside. Marcus stood over a map table, confident and calm. He was younger than his cousin Vaughn, but carried the same rigid certainty in designation hierarchy. "Your Majesty," he said mockingly. "Come to surrender?" "Come to end you," Cashin said. "With what army? I have thousands. You have dozens. I have something better." Cashin pulled the bloodstone from his jacket. It pulsed with light, responding to the violence around them. "I have the power to equalize your entire force. Make them all human. Watch them choose whether to keep fighting for your crusade or go home to their families." Marcus's confidence flickered. "You're bluffing. Using the bloodstone requires the lunar convergence. That's months away. The full power, yes, but a temporary surge." Cashin looked at Arya. She nodded. "That just requires two true mates willing to share the cost." Together, they gripped the stone. Power exploded outward, washing over the siege lines. Every soldier on the battlefield felt it, designation hierarchy flickering, biological imperatives dissolving. For one crystalline moment, they were all just people. And in that moment, many of them stopped fighting, laid down their weapons, looked around at the blood and death, and asked themselves why they were really here. Not everyone. Some true believers kept fighting. But enough stopped that Marcus's overwhelming numbers suddenly looked vulnerable. Cashin released the bloodstone, swaying. Arya caught him, her own strength failing. "It's over, Marcus," she said. "Call the retreat. End this before more people die for a lie." Marcus stared at them, at his fragmenting army, at the reality that he was losing. Then he drew a hidden dagger and lunged at Cashin. Arya moved on instinct, threw herself between them, felt the blade sink into her shoulder instead of Cashin's heart. Pain exploded through her. She gasped, stumbling. Behind her, Cashin roared, moved faster than should have been possible for someone so exhausted. His sword took Marcus's head before the general even realized what happened. Then Cashin was catching Arya as she collapsed, his face twisted with anguish. "No, no, no, stay with me. Don't you dare." "I'm okay," she managed. "Just a shoulder wound. I've had worse." "You shouldn't have to have any." His hands pressed against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "You were supposed to stay safe in the provinces. And let you die here alone? Not happening." He laughed, choked and broken. "Stubborn, reckless woman. You love me for it." "I do. God's help me, I do." Around them, the battle was ending. Marcus's forces surrendering or fleeing. Palace guards securing the area. Lyra appeared, directing healers toward the wounded. "We won," Arya said faintly. "We actually won." "We survived," Cashin corrected. "Winning comes later. After we heal. After we rebuild. After I properly chain you to the palace, so you never do anything this terrifying again. You can try." "Oh, I will. I'm the king. I'm excellent at being controlling and overprotective when properly motivated." She smiled up at him, her vision blurring with pain and exhaustion. "I love you. I love you too. Now stop talking and let the healers work before I lose my mind." She wanted to argue, wanted to stay conscious and watch the aftermath of what they'd accomplished. But darkness was pulling at her, and Cashin's arms were steady, and she was so very tired. So she let go, and trusted that when she woke, he'd still be there. He always was. Victory is not the absence of cost. It's the willingness to pay that cost for something that matters more than safety. Subscribe to Diya's Romance Library for stories where wars are won through sacrifice, and where true mates find each other again and again, no matter how many times the world tries to tear them apart. 6 months later, Arya stood on the palace balcony, watching the city celebrate. Below, the streets were filled with people, all designations, all classes, moving together without the rigid hierarchy that had defined them for centuries. There was still structure, still organization. But it was chosen now, not enforced by biology. "They're happy," Cashin said, joining her. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "When was the last time this city was genuinely happy? Before your time, probably. Maybe mine too. Then we broke the cycle." He kissed her temple. Together. The past 6 months had been chaos. Rebuilding the capital, negotiating with provinces that still resisted change, establishing new laws that acknowledged designation fluidity while not forcing conformity, trials for war criminals, reconciliation efforts. And through it all, they'd worked side by side.
King and queen.
Partners. Arya's shoulder had healed, though it ached in cold weather. Cashin's wounds had scarred, but they were alive.
Whole.
Together. "The lunar convergence is tonight," Arya said quietly. "I know." They'd been avoiding this conversation for weeks. The full convergence, when the Bloodstone's power would be at its peak. When they could make the changes permanent instead of temporary. When someone would have to die to wield it. "We don't have to do it," Cashin said. "The temporary surges have been enough. People are adapting. We could just let it be. But it's not permanent. Not secure. Designation biology still exists. Future generations could revert. Everything we've built could collapse." "I know. So we have to decide. Tonight." Cashin turned her to face him. His eyes held all the love and fear and determination that had defined their relationship from the start. "I've thought about this every day," he said. "About what Elena wanted. What your father believed. What we've sacrificed to get here. And I've realized something." "What?" "The Bloodstone doesn't require death. It requires life force. Complete, absolute giving." But he paused. "What if we're wrong about it being fatal? What if 2 true mates fully bonded could share that cost and survive?" The texts say. The texts were written before designation fluidity existed. Before the Bloodstone had been used to create partial changes. His grip tightened on her hands. "We've already done the impossible twice. Survived wielding it together. What if we can do it again?" Arya wanted to believe it. Wanted to think they could complete Elena's vision without dying. But hope was dangerous. "And if we're wrong," she asked, "if we both die tonight, then we die free. Knowing we changed the world. Knowing we loved each other." He pressed his forehead to hers. "But I don't think we will. I think the Bloodstone responds to intention. And our intention is to live. To build. To see the future we're creating." "That's optimistic." "You make me optimistic." She laughed softly. "Since when?" "Since you walked into my life and refused to be broken. Showed me that endurance is its own form of strength. That recognition matters more than dominance. That love is choosing someone every day, even when it's hard." Arya's eyes burned. "Those are our vows, aren't they? For the actual wedding ceremony, we keep postponing? If you'll still have me. Despite everything. Despite who I was when we met. You're not that man anymore. And I'm not the girl who came here for revenge." She kissed him softly. "We're something new. Something we built together." "So that's a yes to the wedding?" "Yes to the wedding. Yes to the Bloodstone. Yes to tonight. Yes to," she stopped. "There's something I need to tell you first." Cashin's expression grew concerned. "What?" Arya took his hand and placed it on her stomach. Flat still, showing nothing. But beneath her skin, something new was growing. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. He went completely still. "What?" "About 2 months. I found out last week. The healer confirmed it yesterday." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "Which means if we use the Bloodstone tonight, if something goes wrong, then we don't use it." His voice was absolute. "Not with you carrying our child. Not risking 3 lives instead of 2. But the kingdom will survive with temporary surges for another 60 years until the next convergence. Our child won't." He cupped her face. I won't sacrifice you and our baby for permanence. Some things matter more than completing the mission. Arya closed her eyes, relief and guilt warring inside her. She'd been terrified to tell him. Terrified he'd insist they go through with it anyway. Elena would understand, Cashin said softly. She'd want us to choose life. Choose family. The Bloodstone's purpose was never death, it was freedom. And we've given people that. Shown them what's possible. The rest will unfold in time. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. They stood there as the sun set, holding each other, feeling the new life growing between them. 3 heartbeats instead of 2. Below, the celebration continued.
People dancing, singing,
Living in ways that had been impossible before the Bloodstone ritual. Change had come. Not complete.
not permanent yet,
but real. And sometimes that was enough. The wedding happened a month later. Small, intimate, just the council, close friends, and Celeste, who cried through the entire ceremony. They exchanged vows under an ancient oak in the palace gardens, the same tree where Cashin had first told Arya he felt hope. "I promise to choose you," Cashin said, his voice steady. "Every day. In moments of peace and moments of crisis. When you're easy to love and when you're impossible. I promise to see you, really see you, the way you saw me when no one else could." Arya's hands shook as she spoke her own vows. "I promise to endure with you, not for you. To stand beside you as an equal. To recognize your strength and hold space for your vulnerability. To build a future worthy of everyone who died dreaming of it." When they kissed, the assembled crowd cheered, and Arya felt something settle in her chest.
Peace.
Belonging.
Home.
8 months after the wedding, their daughter was born. They named her Elena Aldera. Elena for Cashin's lost mate. Aldera, a variation of Aldrich, for Arya's father. "She's perfect," Cashin whispered, holding the tiny baby with infinite care. "She has your eyes. She has your stubborn chin." Arya countered from the bed, exhausted but smiling. Celeste peered over Cashin's shoulder, her expression odd. "She's so small. Can I hold her?" Carefully. As her sister held the baby, Arya watched Cashin's face. Saw the wonder, the fierce protectiveness, the love so absolute it transformed him. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "That she'll grow up in a world we changed, where her designation won't define her destiny, where she can be anything, scholar, warrior, queen, or just herself." His voice roughened. "Where she'll never have to endure what you endured, or what Elena endured, or my father." Exactly. He sat on the bed beside her, careful not to jostle. "We didn't make it perfect, but we made it better. Good enough.
For now.
And we have time to keep improving." Celeste handed the baby back to Cashin, who cradled her like she was made of glass. Elena Aldera yawned, tiny and fierce, and Arya felt her heart expand impossibly. "Tell me a story," she said to Cashin, "about what her world will be like." He thought for a moment, his eyes distant. In her world, designation will be a fact, not a prison. Omegas will lead councils and armies. Alphas will write poetry and raise children. Betas will stop being invisible middle children of the hierarchy. Everyone will just be. That's ambitious. We're ambitious people. He smiled. In her world, there will be problems. Different ones. Humans will still be complicated, still hurt each other, still struggle with power and fear. But the biological cage will be broken. What people do with that freedom, that's up to them. And us. We guide. We govern. We show them it's possible. He looked at their daughter. "And we raise this one to be stronger than both of us. To carry the work forward when we're gone." Arya reached out, touching Elena's impossibly soft cheek. "No pressure, little one." The baby made a sound that might have been agreement or protest. It was impossible to tell. They stayed in that room for hours, just the 3 of them, soon to be 4 when Celeste returned with food and refused to leave. Talking quietly about names and futures, and all the mundane concerns of new parents. But underneath it all, Arya felt the weight of what they'd accomplished. Two broken people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances, who'd survived assassination attempts, battles, political coups, and their own demons, who'd changed the fundamental structure of their world because neither of them could accept the way things were. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. There was no happily ever after waiting for them, just the hard work of governance, the ongoing struggle to maintain change, the reality that some people would always resist progress. But it was real,
Honest.
built on recognition and endurance, and the kind of love that chose to stay even when leaving would have been easier. "I'm glad I didn't kill you," Arya said suddenly.
Cashin laughed, startled.
"That's romantic. I'm serious. That first night or the second or any of the times when I could have. I'm glad I chose differently." "Me too." He leaned over, kissed her forehead. "Because everything good in my life came from that choice. From you deciding I was worth something other than revenge. You are worth more than revenge. You were worth transformation. So were you." Elena stirred between them, making tiny noises. Cashin rocked her gently, his expression soft in a way that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. "She's going to be trouble," Celeste predicted. "Both her parents are stubborn, reckless, and terrible at following rules. This child will be chaos incarnate." "Good," Arya and Cashin said simultaneously. They looked at each other and smiled.